there, I'm Melody Fletcher, and I want to welcome you to the Conscious Conversations series. The idea behind these conversations is that, as it turns out, Black people and white people don't really talk to each other about race. Okay, Black people talk about race all the time, but white people, not so much. We don't really know how to. It's uncomfortable and potentially very risky. I mean, what if we say something ignorant? Well, yeah, that's probably totally going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can just ignore these conversations. So, some friends and I decided to have those conversations publicly. Huge, massive gratitude and appreciation to everyone who agreed so readily to participate in these conversations with me and so generously share their insights, wisdom, and time with me. I won't keep you any longer. I hope that you enjoy today's conscious conversation. So welcome back. This is another Conscious Conversation. My name is Melody Fletcher, and I'm being joined today by the wonderful SharRon Jamison, who I have known for, a couple of years. We met at a conference and hit it off like a house on fire, and she's graciously agreed to come and do this, and I'm going to tell a story in a second because you were actually the inspiration for this entire series, SharRon. I think I told you that, but if I haven't, then you're going to find out. But before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing in the world? Because I know that you're a leader, and so let us know what you're doing.
Yes. First, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be here with you. I'm so grateful for that. So thanks so much for your time and your energy and your space. I am a corporate leader in a pharmaceutical company. I'm also a minister, an author, a speaker, and a life coach or a life activator. And I am committed to helping people be who they were born to be, and not settle for what society has taught, or told, or tricked, or tamed, or terrorized them to be. Because when people are who they were created to be, they birth beauty, they bring blessings, but they also build themselves and build their communities and have fulfilling life. And so I do that by a variety of books and coaching programs, sister circles, to really help people remember who they were. Because I believe people come to the world knowing that they're gifted and loved and talented. In some way throughout our path, we forget. We get programmed out of our genius. We get conditioned out of our blessedness. And so I help people go back home to themselves so that they can really remember who they are and thrive and strive and soar higher. So that's what I do. And I do that with women of color in a corporate setting, because a lot of women in corporate setting lose themselves. I also do it with people who are over 50, like I am. We want to reclaim who we are because we were brought up in the 50s or the 40s with a whole bunch of rules about what women could and could not do. I also do it with people who are questioning their faith tradition, because even though I'm a minister, I realize that many times people have bought into the rules and they have outgrown their beliefs, and now they're kind of like spiritual nomads. And so I kind of help them ground themselves by helping them understand you get to determine who God is or who source is for you. So that is the work I do in the world, and I am grateful and I feel privileged to be able to do it.
Wonderful. And if people want to find out more about you, and we'll mention this again at the end of the talk, but they can find you at
SharRonJamison.com. Yep, everything is my name. And SharRon has 2 R's, SharRon Jamison, Jamison.
Yeah, and we will put the link below as well, and we'll put it up on the screen so people can see it, and put your Facebook and your Instagram and your Twitter as well. So if anybody wants to reach out to you after seeing this video, they have an opportunity to do so. So I thought we'd start off by telling the story of the very short, thankfully, story of how you actually inspired, my interaction with you inspired this, even though that interaction was over a year ago. It's what kind of came back to me as I was realizing that a couple people inspired it. One person asked a really astute question, and I'll tell that story when she does her interview because she's agreed to do one. But you and I met at a conference, and we spent 3-4 wonderful days together. And then we're at the airport in Orange County, and our gates are right next to each other, and we have some time. So we're sitting down and we're having a conversation. And for anybody who's ever met me in person, you know that I do not talk about the weather. I don't have surface conversations. I will get right into whatever I can get into with you. That's wherever we're inspired to go. So we're having this wonderful conversation. I don't exactly remember what we're talking about, but I know it was a really good one. And you stopped in the middle of this conversation and looked at me with wonder and said, look at us, a Black lady and a white lady just talking.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I'm sort of, realizing my privilege. And my privilege is that I do not realize that this is not a normal thing to everybody. Because in my reality, this is a normal thing. I have, lived in many different countries. I've had friends from all over the world. This is a normal thing for people of different races and cultures and backgrounds and genders to sit around and have real conversations. And it really was a striking moment for me. And I remember what I said to you, and I did not know what I was saying when I said this. I want you to know that. I don't take credit for this, but what popped out of my mouth was, this is what leaders do, and we need to do more of this. And I had no idea that I was prophesying something in that moment. But it was a profound moment for me. You were saying it was a profound moment for you, but it was a profound moment for me as well, to realize that, oh, wow, my perception of this is completely different from your perception of this right now, and so I want to thank you, first of all, for taking that moment and saying that, because it's not just about calling out like, hey, you're being an ignorant fuck right now, and I can't, I can't let you continue saying this shit that you're saying right now. But also, when something beautiful is happening that we may not be aware of either. And I wouldn't have been as aware of that if you hadn't sort of verbalized it in that moment. So I want to thank you for that. And when I was trying to figure out, like, I'm clearly being called to get involved in this issue in some way, but I want to actually do it properly, that conversation came back to me. And that's when I contacted you and said, can we talk? I have an idea. I don't know if this is going to work. But so you very much helped inspire this, what we're doing here.
Wow. I'm so grateful that I was a source of inspiration, but I'm more grateful that that conversation wasn't lost, the richness of it. As an African-American woman born in the 60s, and I have been in many conversations that were very surface conversations, where I knew people were not comfortable with me, were not comfortable with my genius. There's a certain energy when people have never really interacted with people who are different, right? And you can feel the energy, and you can feel when people are uncomfortable or it's just a novelty. I don't want to be a novelty. I didn't feel that with you. What I felt with you was that here are two women, two human beings, really communing with each other, irrespective of their color. It was two spirits. And it was so profound for me that I had to give voice to it, because I'm always in settings where I'm the only Black woman. I'm in corporate America. I've been in corporate America for almost 35 years. And so I know what that, I know intuitively and intimately what it feels like to be the other, and to know that a person is not comfortable with my otherness. And I didn't feel that. And it was such a rich experience that I had to give voice to it. So yes, I know that feeling, and I know what it feels to be the outlier or the oddball or the person that people don't know how to just be, because they have all this drama and narratives that they want to admit. But see, I know, but energy lets you know when something is there. And so I'm glad that, to have that experience with you.
Yeah. So we're just both so grateful.
Yes. Yes.
I want to ask you a question. I had an experience years and years and years ago with a really good friend of mine, and he happened to be African-American, coming over to visit. I was already living in Germany. He was coming over to Switzerland to visit with some friends, and he brought his mother with him. So an older African-American lady from Vegas, and she had a problem with his homosexuality. but she had overcome it. And, you know, and I got a great education on the whole cultural significance of LGBTQ in the Black community. And that was really fascinating because I didn't know anything about that. And after 2 days, and I'm just being me, you know, happy, shiny puppy, do, you know, and after 2 days, she looked at me and she said, you know, you remind me of my best friend. She's white too, but she's okay. And my heart just broke because I realized that I was going, she is waiting for me to crack open and say something awful, do something awful, show my true colors. And it was only after 2 days that she felt safe with me. And it broke my heart. But it also was, you know, really, again, in education, this happened years and years ago, but it was an education in that, and I wasn't reading energy at the time or anything, but that somebody else's perception could be completely different from mine in the same situation. And so I wanted to ask you, because from my perspective, when I met you, I was like, hello, long lost soul friend, how are you? But did it take you some time to feel safe with me?
Mm-hmm. Good. That's a good question. It's one of the things that I want to you hit on that I think is so important to talk about is that why many times people of color have an openness around race, right? White people are taught reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and race. And we have to be taught young because it can mean life or death. So I have to understand when I'm 1 and 2 years old, what it means to talk to a person, how to surrender my power, how to not look them in the eye. If you're born in a you know, from 1900 to really the 1960s, we had to watch how we engaged with white people because there was Jim Crow, it was lynching, it was segregation, it was driving while Black, it was people, again, calling the police on Black people for no reason at all. You know, like we just saw that lady deal with in the park, but that was happening throughout. But however, yeah, it was just not that happening in the park. Men were dying. So I had to learn about race because if I said the wrong thing, it could mean the death of my parents. So that's why we have a comfort level because we had to always talk about it. Just like people had to learn to read, I had to learn how to read race. I had to learn how to determine intuitively if a person was dangerous, if a person was comfortable with me, if a person has never been around Black people. So at 5, 6 years old, I had an emotional intelligence of an adult. Why? Because it was a survival. So it's interesting. So that's why you can find Black people, we're very comfortable with it because we were raised to be comfortable because we were always integrating, right? Even when the separate but equal, they didn't bust the white kids to the Black neighborhoods. They bust the Black kids to the white neighborhoods. So the onus was never on the white people to learn about Black people, Black history, but we always had to learn, Black people always had to learn about white history. That's why a lot of white people don't know about Juneteenth. They don't know about all the Black inventors. They don't know about the Black holidays. They don't know about the Black national anthem, but I know about the white national anthem. I know about the white holidays. You see what I'm saying? So there was never the same respect. So we were bicultural and white people didn't have to be bicultural. So that's why we were very comfortable because we wanted to stay alive to understand how to get along with white people or read white people. It was almost like it's not like a class, but our parents modeled it. You know, some lessons you're taught and some lessons you are caught. So we were taught and catching lessons all through our lives before we entered kindergarten. Again, it's about survival. And if you had older grandparents, you had really lessons that really, we learned subjugation, how to move away and let the white people pass. So I started learning very early that I was a second-class citizen, not on purpose. My parents wanted to keep me alive. My grandparents wanted to keep me alive. Remember, I was born in the 60s. It was a lot of unrest. And so there was a lot of fear, and fear was used all the time, and that's why people were lynched and bombed. Fear, it was terrorism. So that's how we had to learn. So that's why, you know, we can talk about it. Everybody else is not as comfortable. And I'm like, oh, past the salt, right? It's just, it's part of my nature. The second thing about it is because there's a history of people, white people not seeing us and respecting us, you always have to be on guard to see what type of white person that is, especially if you were born in, from 1900s on to what 1950s, right? Because if you put in that time period a person in the wrong category and you got too comfortable, first, you can still get in trouble, because it was this thing is you don't get too comfortable with people. Because why? There was a sense that I'm superior to you. And so even though we are engaging with you, I got to keep my guard up, because if I relax and get lax, then of course, if you call the police on me, they're always going to believe you. You're going to say I do something. So I'm always at your mercy. And so it affects a person's self-esteem. Now, the problem is, because that's generational and historical, those are messages that are passed down, we're still dealing with the generation that may not understand the lessons, but the lessons are still in their body. The energy is still there. Right? And so it's infuriating. People are angry, but they don't understand why. Where did this rage come? Some of it is passed down, ancestral, because it takes 10, 11 generations to kind of get all of that out. So that's why. And so that's why his mother was waiting. She had to. It was called survival. And I still, and I'm in my 50s, I have to make a conscious decision to relax. It's not normal. But however, if I sense that a person is open and loving and doesn't feel like they're superior, I can relax. But if not, I'm always on guard. And it's exhausting. And that's why after a meeting all day, when I'm in my corporate job, when I come back, I'm exhausted. Why? Because I've been on surveillance, high alert for 8 hours. My whole nervous system has been stimulated and activated. A person can't live like that. And that is really why you see so many diseases in the Black community. Our body, our nervous system is overstimulated. And so just you see diabetes and migraines and weight gain, we're numbing with food. There are reasons why, because poverty and racism is a virus that's deadly. It doesn't kill you immediately. It just kills you little by little. It kills your hopes. It kills your dreams. It kills your self-esteem. It kills your love. It kills your future. It kills everything, your aspirations. It kills your ability to manifest. I don't think people understand how deadly and corrosive racism is. And that's why we have to fight it. And that's why we keep fighting, even at the same time you're wounded. So many times I call myself a wounded healer, because I have to keep fighting for racism and keep leading the charge, because I know if I don't do my part, there are generations behind me that won't have a chance. And so that's why I fight as hard as I do, even though I'm exhausted emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes physically.
Yeah. So thank you for that. That was amazing. So is it possible for you to feel safe in a crowd?
Sure, that's a good question. I feel safe in the crowd after my energy assesses the crowd. And I'm very quick. And that's why it's so funny. You notice a lot of people, especially if they're successful people of color, the EI is off the chart, because I can walk in a room like, ding, not safe. He's safe. I can sense it, and I know it, because remember, it's survival, it's life and death. And so I feel comfortable in the right crowd, but I also am really clear in the crowd if people are not really open to my presence, and I sense that too. And I don't force it now. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I used to. Now I don't give a care. I'm thinking like, you're missing out on a queen. So I don't really force it, but I sense it immediately. And it's not projection, because I always ask myself, okay, Sharon, how much is this is you? But I watch it, and then if you listen to people or see how people engage with you, you can tell anyway. Remember, our private thoughts show up in our public actions. So I'm never wrong.
Well, and you have to err on the side of caution, obviously. as you just explained. But if it's already difficult, one-on-one, that most Black people will have to have their guard up to begin with, at least, I kind of want to put the message out there right now to white people. Do not take it personally if a Black person doesn't warm up to you immediately. It's not about you. It's kind of what I want to say. That's what I'm getting out of this. It's like, it is about you, but it's not about you personally. Like, give it a chance, because they're not afraid of you. They're not judging you. They're not saying you're a bad person. They just don't know you yet. And your skin is making it,
right.
That's why I wanted to ask. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's why I wanted to, something you just said, I'm sorry, about history. And that's why I don't think people understand. There is a history of hurt and wounding. There's been a history of people using their privilege. There's been a history of women calling the cops as if the cops are their personal butlers. There's been a history of women getting raped. There's been a history of police brutality. Y'all were just seeing it. We knew it. We lived it.
Right.
So many times I find people that say, well, somebody has an attitude. No, we're just trying to assess you because we don't want to die, or we don't want to get fired. Oh, because just think, if I know that something affects my life and my livelihood and my legacy, I'm on surveillance until I realize I can relax. So what can help a person relax? Just say it. You know what? I can tell that you're a little uncomfortable. I would be uncomfortable with me too. Just say it. Guess what?
Yes.
And not everybody said, okay, now we
call
both
it out.
You call it out. And,
yes.
And so I think that, because to not say it makes me know that you're not aware of it, and you're not aware of what, and it's not you, it's the collective. People always think, I always hear people say, oh, I'm not a racist. I'm not saying you individually, but there's a racist system that you're benefiting from. And also, since you're part of a system that oppresses me and my family, just call it out. Just say it. And so then we both can have an honest conversation. And I think that, and I remember being at that table with you, and your willingness to engage made me relax. And I said, you know what, I like her. And that's all it took. But everybody, the other people who were very uncomfortable, let me know that I had to be careful, because I'm not going to pay to be subjugated. It's one thing when I'm at work, but I'm thinking, this is fun for me. I don't care,
But I think there's something really good to dissect there, because from my read of it, they weren't looking to subjugate you. They were so terrified of saying something wrong, of being misconstrued as racist, of hurting you. Because I don't think any one of those people were hateful in any way, shape, or form. I didn't, get that. But, and I kind of, I used to say there's nothing scarier than a man who's afraid. I would say there's nothing scarier than white people who are afraid, right? Their fear, our fear, is dangerous to you.
Absolutely.
If I'm afraid of you, you're in trouble, because that's probably going to cause me to do something really horrible to you in order to mitigate my own fear, right? Absolutely. So they were afraid. I don't think they were afraid of you, because I think there's definitely, people who are afraid of Black people. We see that with the cops, unarmed, completely, cuffed. This person is not a threat to you in any way, shape, or form, but I'm so afraid of them, I have to kill them before I can feel safe. Like, that's fear of, the Black person and what they're going to do. But I think a lot of people are so afraid. And I'm obviously not speaking to those people right now. I'm sorry, I can't speak, to everything. But I think that the crowd that is ready for change are the white people who want to do good, whose heart would be broken if they ever thought that somebody thought that they were racist. So they do a lot of justifying. I have a lot of Black friends, and I'm not racist, I promise. But that's still dangerous, because there's still fear pointed in your direction, right? And I think that a really powerful thing that has been coming through lately is that it is entirely possible to not be a racist and say and do racist things out of ignorance. So you can not have meant any harm and still have done something that is racist without being racist.
I don't know if I believe that. And let me just tell you why.
Yes, no, tell me, please.
Couple of things that I just wrote down that I had to talk about. To not talk about, silence is always violence, right? Silence is violence. Fear is something I just love what you said. A scared white person gets black people killed. You're right. But fragility is just as dangerous, because it says that I am still taking my power and choosing if I'm going to talk or if I'm going to engage. Now I might use tears. I might deflect and defend and project and do all the other manipulative type of things, but it's still dangerous because it still keeps white people safe at the detriment of black people. Mm-hmm. So to say that a person, they just don't know, that's I don't believe that. And also it even triggers me. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
White people can Google anything that's important to them, right? Let me say it this way. As a black person, I had to learn white history and learn history books, even though the books were filled with lies. The history books were filled with lies about slavery and indigenous people. I'm black and Cherokee. I know the lies, right? But however, I had to learn it, study it, take a pass the test to graduate to know history that I knew was a lie. So I had to learn. So to say that a person say they're ignorant, they're choosing the ignorant. Ignorance is always a choice. You've seen another black person in the world, something, and you see all this dissension. That means you don't care enough to say, let me Google and see why we can't. What's some of the problems? I know a little bit about Dr. Martin Luther King. What did he really stand for? I see this stuff on the news. Let me look that up. For a person to say I'm ignorant is a cop out. To say this, I'd rather somebody to say, I didn't feel it didn't affect me and I didn't want to learn. Be honest. Versus saying I don't know. You go to Google for everything else, right? And so if a black person has to learn, I didn't get a choice to learn history that was a lie. I couldn't graduate from high school without knowing American history that was a lie. Because remember, whoever has the pen writes the history. Mm-hmm. However, white people didn't have to learn the truth about the indigenous people. They didn't have to learn black history. They didn't have to learn about Juneteenth of all the black inventors. They didn't have to know all the people who built the White House. We had to know who lived in the White House, but not who built the White House. The black people, slaves, built the White House. Isn't that interesting? So when people talk about that, I know that they're good people. Well, they're not good people, because good people say that I understand my privilege, and I want to understand how I got here so I can be better. A good person says, I know that my intelligence is limited. It's the same thing when a person says, I want to start a business. What do? They go learn some business skills. So I want to learn how to be a better friend. What do? I'm going to go learn how to be a better friend. I want to be a better partner. I'll go get marriage counseling. I want to learn how to eat better. I'll go get a nutritionist. Why? Because there is some desire to learn. There was no desire to learn black history because the information has always been there. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So when people say, oh, they're good people, well, they were good people. They might have just not care about black people. Because if you cared, you would educate yourself. You invest in what you care about. You invest your time, your talent, and your treasure. Right? So if you invest your time, talent, and treasure in what you care about. That's why I even ask my students, I don't have time. I said, you know what? Let's look at your calendar and where you spend your money. That'll let me know what you really care about. So we make life so complicated. I learned, because I wanted to be a better human being, I learned about other cultures. I knew it was my responsibility first to learn about black people. I had to, because if not, I would have thought I was stupid like the white schools told me. I learned about Native Americans. I learned about Mexican Americans. I learned about people who, even though I'm Christian, I married a Muslim, my first marriage. I learned about Jewish Holocaust. I learned about when the Japanese were, they took their land in California and put them in internment camps. Why? Because it was American history. It was not the white history. There was a whole bunch of American. I learned about lynching. I learned about white women got to vote in 1920, but about black women didn't get to vote till 1965. Ignorance is a choice. So for people to say, "Oh, I just didn't know," it's a cop out, and it's triggering because it says that my life is not valuable enough. That fairness and equity and justice is not valuable enough for you to spend time researching. You research everything. You research Google to make a cake. You research Google to find a therapist. You research Google to learn for recipes. You won't research Google to understand how to be what's going on with black people, why white people don't get along. That doesn't tell me. So that's not a good white person. Is a person that I'm using my privilege, and because I have power, and I never have to worry about engaging with you because I'm over you. Since I don't have to engage with you, I don't have to learn about you. It's really an insult. And then and people don't realize it. Because I know your history. Does that make sense?
This is such a powerful point you're making right now, Sharon. And I thank you so much for being courageous enough to challenge me on this. For, you listen to me and then you're like, nah. And that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
To kind of say, tell me I'm wrong, please. Like, I want to learn. And that's the kind of ignorance that, in my view, I'm talking about, where it's okay for me to get it wrong and then to listen to you tell me different, because I have to, for me, acknowledge my privilege in that I don't know, but you have just opened up this massive, so it's okay for me to say, I don't know. Let me finish that point. I don't know, but I want to know. And, my first thought was, I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not challenging you. You just gave me a massive gift. But I don't know if you can Google a perspective. You can Google information, but without the conversations, the perspective may not lock in terms of its relevance. But I think that what you just said was it's a new perspective for me. There's new data in here, so I'm really letting it sort of crunch along because it's delicious. Is this idea that if we look only at actions, so, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, well, tell me why I shouldn't have said that. And from a white perspective, one could go like, yeah, of course. But what I hear you saying, and please tell me if I'm not yet getting it, is if you understood our goddamn history, you would know not to have said that. And why is it my responsibility to teach you all of it? It's kind of like when you're going to Germany and then you go in front of a Jewish synagogue and you're like, oh, hey, have you guys heard of Hitler? And it's like, dude, educate yourself, crack a fucking book. That's not okay. And that's not that hard to not be ignorant about that. Like this isn't some nuanced thing that only a few people know. This is like, if you understand history, there's a lot of missteps you are not going to make automatically because you understand us. Is that, did I
oh my God, you said it so beautifully. And it's all about something you said, you can't get perspectives. Well, maybe. I feel like there's so much information. Because remember, black people are not a monolithic people like white people are not a monolithic people.
Yeah.
But however, there are some themes and some threads that even if you went on Google and listened to 7 perspectives, you're like, oh, there's some themes here. Lack of access, poverty, injustice, police brutality, undereducation, redlining, voter issues, you know what I'm saying? Disproportionate mass incarceration. I don't care if the black person was, Democrat, Republican, independent, poor, educated, rich. They might use different words, but the message will be the same. So you might not get the perspective, but at least you will have enough so that you can come to a conversation to engage with some empathy in some respect. Because if what happens is you always make the Black person do the emotional labor. And it's analogous to, because I'll say this as women, because I think this helps. One of the things I have been hurt by with guys, right? It's almost saying, listen, hi, you being raped? Tell me what that rape feels like. Yeah, tell me how did it feel when he pulled your clothes off? How did you feel? Wow, that's what it feels like. So instead of, because there's no sense of some understanding, there's no empathy. It's like as if I'm not even a person. I'm a caricature, right? But if you know a little bit and see me as a human, there's some basic empathy there that you can say, come to the conversation and say, you know what? I don't know what this meant, but I read about that. Can you help me understand what that means to you? Very different perspective. Because listen, nobody is trying or expects people to get it right. Black people get it wrong, right? So there's no such thing as right. Mm-hmm. It's such thing as I care. Caring is a universal language. Yes. Empathy is a universal language. What made you different than other people? I didn't feel that sense of needing to armor up. I felt welcomed. You're an energy person. I'm not. This is your specialty. But
no, honey, no, you are.
Well, I was just saying, whatever your energy it was, I felt that your energy welcomed me. Does that make sense? And it was in stark contrast to the others. And that's why I think that you're so good at this work, because you not only are open to being challenged, but you try. You weren't trying to get it right. I wasn't trying to get it right. Right? But we were human beings.
Connecting.
Yeah. And so that is why I think that when we make people of color do the emotional labor to explain. And so it's almost like we're on a plantation again, doing all the damn work. Just like, seriously, I'm on a plantation, I'm doing all the work for the white people. Now I got to do the emotional work. So it's like, when would a person do their own part? And even if they come to me wrong, come to me with a sense of humility. And guess what? You raise out your hand and I will take your hand and we can walk together. I mess up with other races all the time. I mess up with when I'm dealing with people who are differently able. I might say something stupid with a person of a different faith. And I might say something different with a person of a different ethnic group. But this is how I do it. First, I study people, right? And then I said, you know what? I want to ask you a question because I want to learn. And this is what I research. So I let them know I do my homework. This is what I research, but I understand this is book stuff. It might not be your learned experience, and your learned experience is what matters to me. But then we have a conversation. But at least I say I cared enough to look it up. It's almost like you go on MapQuest. You just don't hop in a car and just take off. You at least put in your GPS. And you try your best to start going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's all that is. Just get enough. Just do your GPS. And if you get lost and you have a sense of humility, somebody's going to help you find your way. Life is that simple.
I love that. So a lot of this really, and I'm loving your perspective because it's beautiful. A lot of this, from what I'm hearing you say, and is my understanding that I'm coming to here, is that it's really about respect. And kind of like this is the image that I got. I'm a metaphor person. I'm a very metaphor heavy person because I think metaphors contain so much information. But it's like if I'm going to ask someone a question, and let's say it's my white male college professor, I respect his time, right? His time is valuable. I'm going to respect his office hours. I'm not going to just show up at his house. I'm not going to just call him anytime on the phone. I respect this person. I respect their time. Their time is valuable to me. I'm going to do my best to keep my questions succinct, to clear it up. There's respect there. If I do not respect somebody, maybe I expect them to change their schedule around mine. Maybe I come at them with an energy of, here's 50,000 questions. I couldn't bother to be more succinct. I didn't do my homework before I came and talked to you. I don't value your time or, your effort. I'm certainly probably not going to say thank you nearly as much. And I'm not going to even ask permission if I can ask you a question, because why would I? I don't respect you. And so, I love how you talked about that. Really, I saw the energy of that. It's like, do you care? And your actions tell me if you care or if you don't care. You can't just say you care. That's not enough. I care about Black people. Yay. Do you actually respect and care for people? Do you respect them as much as you would a white person in the same situation? I think that's a good question, an uncomfortable question for white people to ask themselves, but a really good question to ask ourselves. I think men can ask themselves that question too. It's like, do I respect this person as much as I would a man in her position? In your case, they might even say like a white man in your position. How would I treat a white man in her position? And is there a difference? And if there is a difference, you might need to take a look at that, but do you care enough to honor this person's time? Do you care enough to learn the history on your own and then ask the questions to find the perspective to really lock it all together, instead of just, can you do all the work for me? And it's really heartbreaking, but I felt the truth of it when you said, it's kind of like we're back on the plantation and we're still doing all the work for the white people. And I thought, God, that feels true. Shit, how the sense of entitlement is awful. I see this happening a lot. It's sort of the sort of bro energy, which is, what? We're trying. What more do you want?
Absolutely.
And it's like no recognition. You can tell me if I'm getting this or not, but there's no recognition of what has happened and the impact that it has had. It's like everybody, the people who, and it's not every white person, but I'm talking about a certain energy here, but a lot of people who want to even be activists or who show up once or twice and then get indignant, they want to come at this from a neutral place. Like, I'm neutral. I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm willing to help because I'm a good person. Instead of, I kind of used the metaphor earlier, which was, it's like if you go in a store and your brother's with you, and your brother is drunk and he breaks everything and he completely trashes the place, right? Now, most people, I think most Western people, most Western white people at least, would be like, never go back to that store. I'm just never going to go back to that store. I'm just not going to deal with this. I'm embarrassed. I'm humiliated. I'm never going to go back to that store. But what if you did go back to that store? Would you walk in and go, what? It wasn't me. No, it's not maybe your fault, but you might want to take some responsibility. You might want to acknowledge. And, I understand I'm simplifying this massively because there's a whole systemic racism of people benefiting from that I'm kind of leaving out of the metaphor. But to make a specific point, sometimes oversimplified works to do that. Like, you would probably go in there and go, hi, sorry, what, like, that was shit. Oh my God. I don't agree with that. Like that, you would either run away from it if you can't handle confrontation, or you would acknowledge it. You would never just walk in and be like, what? Like, how dare you say anything to me about what was done to you, which is exactly what happens a lot of the time. And so I think, a lot of the rage that I see in Black people who are daring to finally stand up for themselves, and white people getting so indignant and going, what's your problem? Is because they're like, the way you just asked me a question is not okay. Your words you used, the energy you're coming at me with is not okay. Because you're walking into my paint store that your brother ruined and shit all over and destroyed for generations to come, and basically going, what? Wasn't me. Am I getting it?
Oh, you are getting it. Oh my God. It's that sense of entitlement, just like you said. I love that. And it's even a sense of entitlement that I have to learn the history, right? It's so funny. Even at my job, we have this initiative around diversity, and people are getting tired. Why we got to keep talking about it? And I'm thinking, you get educated by racism, but I have to endure it.
Yeah.
But just because after 3 weeks you're tired, you get to walk away, knowing that I have to still worry and I'm still not safe. Is that sense of entitlement? Is that sense of my time and who I am is more valuable than you? It's a gross negligence that I don't even see you as a human. I don't see your children as important. I don't care about your future. I don't care. And it's a sense of entitlement. And then the challenge is, then you have some whites who want to help, but then you have white saviorism. I'm the white person. I'm going to help the black people. You know, you have this John Wayne mentality, and then then it's like, okay, the black people are supposed to clap. Oh, good white person. So we get tired of the white saviorism, and that's why I even hate. And that, I know hate's a strong word. When white missionaries go over to other cultures and give them Jesus, they have their own culture. They have their own religion. They have their own faith. Even when they did to the indigenous people, even through history, in the history books, they said they were heathens. No, just because you don't understand the culture doesn't mean it's less important. And so you have the white saviorism. Well, I'm gonna go and save the world, manifest destiny, which was a bunch. I hate to say this is shit. Yes, I'm a minister, but that's how I feel about it. I feel strongly about it. So you have the white saviorism. You have the white centering. Well, everything has to benefit me. What about me? My pain. Then you have white fragility. I'm too fragile to have these conversations. I don't have the intellectual and spiritual stamina to continue in the conversation. Right? So I don't have the stamina to do it. So I'm gonna check out when I get ready. White fragility. White. Then you have white supremacy. I'm above it. I shouldn't have to do it. I am so wonderful. Y'all are less than me. You have hot privilege. Of course I go first. Of course I get the best. Of course it's my turn. I don't care if I'm in the back of the line, the front of the line, the middle of the line. It's always my turn. Mm-hmm. So if you think about, then you have the white guilt. Oh, I'm just going to cry. But your guilt doesn't change policy, right? Your guilt doesn't change anything. So some people wallow in their guilt, but guilt doesn't mean you win. Wallowing and winning are not the same thing. And so, however, wallowing it is a luxury when you're black. I don't get to wallow. My parents didn't get to wallow. My parents had to raise black kids to be not only smart, but resilient. We had to teach us how to navigate in the world, in two worlds, the black world and the white world. Had to teach us how to navigate in corporate America. Corporate America has beat the hell out of me but if I didn't have parents who taught me about my black history, I went into corporate America knowing that half the things, there was other inventions, so many inventions that I didn't learn in history books. Like, internet was a black person. The street light was a black person. The washing machine's a black person. Blood banking was a black person. You know what I'm saying? That Benjamin Madiker and the doggone the clock, the architect for the White House is a black person. So I had some data that made me like, I don't care what you say. I know that my ancestors contribute. But what about the black people who didn't have my parents? Mm-hmm. And they never had an opportunity to know their history. And back then, we didn't have Google, remember? So back then, you had to go to the libraries, and the libraries didn't have the black books. You had to go to the black bookstore. So that means that if you were not of a certain social economic group, you didn't have money for books, you wouldn't learn. There was no there were not a lot of black information in the encyclopedias. Remember our days, it was the encyclopedias. Remember those encyclopedias? I do. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of black stuff. So to learn about us, it took a concerted effort. And you had to go to a black bookstore. And
you had to have the impetus to even go do that, which means something has happened. Otherwise, because I honestly, as a child, I didn't see a black person until I was 10.
Wow.
And I didn't meet a black person until I was well into my teens. I had never been confronted by racism. I hadn't even though I was living in a patriarchal society and certainly there was sexism, I was not aware of it consciously.
Yeah.
So I hadn't actually personally been affected by it all that much. So prejudice was not, I mean, I grew up in a bubble. I really did. And I'm grateful for that on one hand, because I grew up without hate, but you have to have an experience that makes you go, shit, I might want to educate myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up knowing.
School doesn't ask you to do that. Nobody at school, it may be changing now, I don't know, but I don't know if it is. But, you know, I certainly entered the American school system, and in the German school system, this wasn't even a topic. But I entered the American school system, and there was nobody who said, you know, hey, let's learn about Black history. So I would have had to have an experience. So I didn't start learning about Black history until years later, because you have to have the experience to you know, it's not put out there. It's like you have to seek it out. And that's how little value we give that.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is sad because like I said, I knew the difference immediately. As soon as, and it's not that I had language for it. I watched it. I watched my grandmother who cleaned white people's homes. So I start understanding hierarchy at 2 or 3 years old. Because for example, the white little kid used to call my grandmother by her first name. Her name was Elizabeth, right? But as a Black kid, I had to call the white woman with Miss. So I understood. I couldn't articulate it, but I said, oh, the Black kids. The white kids get to call the Black people by their first name. Now in our culture, Black culture, you don't call older people by their first name.
You didn't call her by her first name.
Never. So even if they were older, we would call somebody sister such and such, mother such and such, deacon such and such, cousin such and such, auntie such and such. It doesn't matter if they were relative or not. Miss such and such. It was you gave a title to celebrate who they were. But I saw these white kids, hey, Lizzie, I'm like, that's my grandmother. What? I knew instinctively. I was like, okay, I couldn't articulate it, but I watched it. You see what I'm saying? And so then when I got older, when I started, it was time to go to school, and I was the only Black kid, my parents had to give you the race talk. So my parents had to teach me. And then in 5 years old, I'm in kindergarten. And so I was in kindergarten, and we're in a circle, and I jumped up too quickly. My teacher took a chair and hit me over the head. I'm 5 years old. Because in her mind, I was threatening her. I'm 5. Why? Because she had been taught and inculcated and internalized that message that Black people are violent, scary people. She didn't see me as a 5-year-old child. She saw me as a person who moved too fast. She hit me in the head with a chair. 2nd grade, I'm playing by myself. Nobody used to play with me. I was a Black kid. A whole bunch of kids beat me up and threw me on the ground from the monkey bars. You know, we used to have to do the flips on the monkey bars. Yeah. And so what happened? I got a concussion, right? So it took a while. However, the playground assistant saw the kids who were adults, saw the kids beating me up. So then when I'm on the ground and I can't get up, then they come and pick me up. Take me to the nurse's office, because that's in the day when you had school nurses. Then the nurse didn't call my mom. And then my mother said, why didn't you call me? My mother's a nurse. She was in nursing school. Why didn't you call my mom? You know what the nurse told my mom? She had heard that blacks had harder heads, and she thought I was okay.
Oh my God.
So here's my mom. Remember, my mother, you know, she's feeling powerless. You know, here's her daughter. I have a concussion. So by the time I'm in 3rd grade, I'm in full-blown childhood depression. We didn't know it till I got 10 years old. 10 years old, I gained 50 pounds over a summer. Why? I'm depressed. But nobody in that day talked about, we didn't know about the impact of bullying, right? Yeah. We just thought, oh, this is integration. And so because being beat up and subjugated by white people was the norm, I would talk about it all the time. But when you normalize pain and normalize abuse, nobody does anything until one of your eyes are gone. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, I guess she lost her eye. This is serious, right? And that's what happens when you start to dehumanize people. You don't realize the impact of it. That's why up until the 1998 in Louisiana, they took a black man, chained him to the back of a car, and pulled him down the street till all of his limbs and all of his skin fell off. In the 1990s. That's why in some places, up to the 1900s, people still were slaves because they lived out of South Carolina, and they didn't know that we had been emancipated. And here they are, because remember, if you live in a rural area and there's no TVs, whatever, and you grew up in a plantation, you don't know to ask the question. That's why Juneteenth is so important. We were free for 2 years until word got down to Texas. Hey, y'all are free. That's why Juneteenth is celebrated and not July 4th. So you have to put all that in perspective. And so when people say, "Oh, why do I have to keep learning? I've been learning about racism for 3 weeks. I'm tired." Well, I've been living it for 55 years and dealing with not only racism, Jim Crow, segregation, lynching. Lynching was happening until the 1960s and 1970s. Women were lynched. Women were lynched and their bellies were cut open and the babies falling out. Same with Native Americans. Now, that makes people feel uncomfortable. But it's the history. Even in the 1940s, there were some black servicemen somewhere in Europe. And the place in Europe that they were in, they didn't believe in blacks only. So the blacks and the whites were interacting. Do you know the white servicemen went over there and started a war and shot the black servicemen in another country because another country would not support their black only law, the racism? So here is in the history books now, we hear about it now, but the white servicemen killed 17 black army people in the same army because the white Europeans did not make them be blacks only. And so the black people listen, they say we can come. So here's America is going to go enforce their segregation in another country. That's in the history books. Nobody knows about that. White army killed 17 of their own. So it's all this history that when people don't know, and then they wonder why black people are mad because you only know 1/10 of what we know. And those are the things that.
No, honestly, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know shit. But I appreciate someone being gracious enough to help me fill in the massive gaps. Because there is so much history and it is such an uncomfortable history and it isn't one. I mean, to tell you the truth, white people aren't even very good at telling the white part of the history correctly. Never mind the black part of the history, right? I mean,
the Native Americans, yeah. Because remember, I'm holding on to my Cherokee.
Yeah, it's like it's all been, not just whitewashed, but elite washed and wealth washed.
Yes.
So we just get to feel good about it. Let's, here we are. This is going to go out, a couple weeks from now, but here we are. We're doing this on just before July 4th. And, and I don't want to take away people's barbecues or anything. For God's sakes, go have fun. Absolutely. Especially in the time of Corona, people can use a little joy. But when we start to actually look at what we're celebrating, when we do Thanksgiving, when we do July 4th, when we do, it's why can't we kind of say, okay, we're choosing to have a day of celebration, but let's see what we're celebrating and maybe let's start celebrating things that we can actually be proud of. And let's take a look at our history and what we have done, and not run away from it because, if you don't understand history, if you don't take a look at it, if you don't dissect it and understand the reason, it's not just about learning the dates, it's about learning the reasons that things happened. And if you don't do that, you are going to repeat it. And these cycles keep repeating and keep repeating and keep repeating. And you can watch that throughout history, and that we have to break these cycles. And the way to do that, I think one way to do that is to take a look at and be honest. Just like, you know, I work with people individually, I work with groups, I work on their energy. And if you want to change your life, you have to take a look at the shit that you don't want to take a look at, the stuff that makes you uncomfortable. And you have to look at the things that you feel guilty about. And you have to take a look at the things that, you know, oh, I was a bitch to my little brother when I was 5 and my heart still hurts. But, you know, you've got to take a look at that because you're still reacting to that right now. So as a nation, as a world, we have to turn on the light. We have to turn off the morphine. We have to acknowledge that these things happened. We have to take responsibility for them, have empathy, and not wash our hands of it constantly and go, well, that didn't have anything to do with me. You are living in a system that was created through those events. It does have something to do with you, you know, maybe not directly, but indirectly. Yes, absolutely. You are, that works in family systems, that works in cultures, it works in religions, it works in geographic locations. You are a product of that. And I think that we have to be willing to say, yeah, Black people got strung up on trees, and there was sexual mutilation for the humiliation, and the, you know, women's reproductive organs were cut open, and because, you know, how dare you? And then men's penises were cut off.
Yes.
To humiliate them and take away their power, because even hanging on a tree, they were a threat. It's, you know, this may be hard to comprehend. It certainly is for me. It is very hard for me to comprehend how something like that happens. And I do my best to look at the underlying energy to gain some grasp on what the belief systems are that cause people to behave in this way. And yet, if we do not, have we really changed?
Yeah, that is so powerful. And we have to look, that's why we have to look at the systems. Even as a minister, the church has been complicit in racism. The church perpetuated racism. The church split over racism. And then some people who are even abolitionists, they still were not for integration. See, people, that's what, like, learn your history, right? And so as a minister, I challenge that. I challenge patriarchy in the pulpit, but I also challenge the racism in the church. And because the church, especially these evangelical Christians, they support not only sexism and racism, but also women. And that's why, let me just tell you this, that we're doing this. A lot of white women, a lot of Black women don't trust white women, even with this feminism, because there was a lot of racism in feminism. And that's why Black women started womanism, because the feminism wanted to have their issues. And their issues was, you know, I want to, you know, they didn't have to work. They didn't want that sexual harass. They didn't have food deserts. They didn't have in their community. They didn't have to deal with the intersection of race and sex. They didn't have the same issue. They had the protection of white skin. And if you look at the feminist movement, a lot of Black voices, they stymie, because again, that inbred racism. And that's why you see that there's a lot of challenge with white women and Black women, because when we find that white women will side with us around sexism, but when the shit really hits the fan, you have to give up some of that privilege. Oh, I'm white, and so we left by ourselves, and that has happened all throughout history, from all throughout the 60s, the 70s, even today. And that's why you have this whole thing about feminism and womanism. Because we're like, so there's, and again, that's why I think it's so important to know the history. Because if a person didn't know the history, they're like, oh, Black women are just angry and hard to get along with. Well, wait a minute, look at the history, and that's why there's a belief that the Black woman is the least protected and the least respected, right? And then we always are taught to be strong which means that if your whole image, if you have internalized that you have to be strong, you don't get to be human. So if I have to be strong, that means I don't get to cry. I can't ask for help. I can't have a breakdown. So what do? I just bleed inside. I die, but it's a slow death. And since I can't have anybody to help me, I have to be alone. And then because I have so much rage, I look like the angry Black woman, but I'm not angry, I'm hurting. But hurt looks like anger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I just picked up on, you could tell me if I got it right, is just a huge long succession of betrayals.
Yeah.
So you tried, you got betrayed, you tried, you got betrayed, you tried, you got betrayed. And then at some point you get a bit bitter, which would be completely understandable. And maybe you're a bit standoffish and somebody says, what? Like, why are you so difficult? Because it's like you and your people and everything you represent has done nothing but betray me over and over and over again. It was just this thread of betrayal.
Yeah, and I have nothing left. Yeah, I have to, and so a lot of, and because therapy, a lot of people didn't have health insurance. So the church was the free, where you can go for free, right? So the church became somebody's morphine, but you still didn't handle the issue, right? You still did not, you still didn't talk it out. And so that's why mental health issues never got addressed. Now it is destigmatized. You can have a therapist.
Is it destigmatized in the Black community?
Yeah, I think it's getting there. I talk about therapy all the time because as an influencer, I want people to know, listen, I pray. It's okay to pray and have Prozac at the same time. I mean, God made Prozac. Go get some, you can listen and get some Lexapro. They go together, Ambien, hallelujah. You know what I'm saying? So I try to normalize it. And I put myself out there because I struggle with an eating disorder. But I was numb. I struggle with depression. But how could I have not? When I'm in a world that tries to kill me. It killed my spirit, not my body, but if you kill the spirit, you kill the soul. And that's why, Melody, is so important that people understand. People don't understand, why does it seem like Black people don't care? Racism kills you from the inside out. So sometimes it hurts too hard to care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Racism not only affects your attitude, affects your access, affects your age, affects your aptitude, affects your advancement, affects everything. So why should I care about my neighborhood? I'm nothing. I've been taught I was nothing before I even knew how to spell nothing. Why should I care? Why should I honor and respect another Black life? My life doesn't matter. And so we have to, when we talk about it, people want to just talk about, like, it's kind of like the body. I'm going to talk about the eye, but we got to talk about, what about the rest of the body? Everything is connected. And that's why I think when people don't want to talk about racism, or they want to talk about one thing, you got to talk about the structures and the systems that keep racism intact and perpetuate racism. Because white women have a glass ceiling, we have a cement wall everywhere, right? And it doesn't matter if you are the pimp, the priest, the president. Look how they did Barack Obama, and he was one of the most educated presidents we have ever had. Look at what they did with Michelle, one of the most educated first ladies. But however, here is a woman, Michelle Obama. They printed a picture of her, first lady now, first lady with some guns and with her breast out. Now we saw that. So here is, who have they ever done that to another first lady? Now we know Trump's wife's been naked. You know that she did pictures of her being naked because she did.
But that was her choice.
That's her choice, but not Michelle Obama's. Yeah. So here I am, 2 degrees from an Ivy League school. I'm gonna paint your face, put a monkey mouth on your face, put a gun thing on you, and put your breast out. And you're gonna degrade a Black woman like that, our first lady. And nobody thought to say something to the magazine. Now, the white people are not seeing that, but the black people were like,
people didn't protest that?
oh, we did, but we don't have enough. Racism cannot be dismantled by black people, just like patriarchy cannot be dismantled by women. Now we can because there's more women than men. And now women are starting to get more power. Well, what are we, 15% of the population? So I just, however, look how they did Obama, one of the most educated. They put monkey faces on him, you know, put a hood on him, put a noose around his neck. I'm a black person and I'm seeing that. Now,
what message does that send to a young black girl or boy?
Thank you.
Growing up.
Yes.
Saying you could, you know, on the one hand, it was like, you know, yeah, now we could be president. But on the other hand, even if you make it to president, you're still going to get this kind of shit.
I'm still going to emasculate you.
You're never going to be equal. You're never going to be equal.
But I will tolerate you. Now, here's the thing that triggers me. But I will tolerate you if you can pass a ball, run with the ball, or dribble the ball. So I don't like you as a person, but I will use your body to win a sport.
For entertainment and money. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you can entertain me like a minstrel, or you can run a ball, catch a ball with brute strength, I will accept you. So what happens is you see black people. It's like, why is everybody trying to do that? Because that's all we see. It's the only way out. We saw we could go into college. We got Barack Obama, right? So I don't think people understand. It's a mentality that goes with racism. So it's not that people can't read or write. They're like, listen, I want out the ghetto. What is the easiest and fastest way? Because you're not threatened if I dribble a ball. You're not threatened if I run a ball, but you're threatened if I'm a PhD. You're threatened if I'm an MD. You will hurt me if I go to Harvard, but if I'm running the ball, you'll let me slide. You'll take a picture of me. You know, you're like, oh, here's Michael Jordan. But we don't want to. But if you're someone else, like Mae Jameson, or the African doctor, I can't even think I can't even think that's doing this brain surgery. You can't do anything with him. We don't hear about him. So I just want you to understand that people think, so now we get the reputation that we are superior athletes. We're just trying to get the hell out. So we're like, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, this is what I need to do. And people do what they see. So if I can understand the only way to liberate me and my family is if I invest in this, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to invest in it. I got to throw it all out of the line. I got to get out. So we have to, so that's why a person has to sit back and see, like, I love the analogy, get all the pieces of the puzzle. Now you can have a better understanding. It's not that, you know, black kids don't read. We have seen it doesn't matter if you can read. But all it matters if I can play a basketball. It matters because I get some respectability that I won't get as a PhD or MD or MBA. Sad. Why? Because that's still ownership. Because it's saying that I'm the white man and I'm going to pick you. It's a different type of slave. It's still a slave. You're still running and using your body. Yeah, because who owns the teams? White men. Who own the plantation? White men. So I think it's important, if people really want to understand racism, to sit back and say, how does the government cause it? How does the education play a role? How does poverty play a role? How does politics play a role? How does the banking play a role? How does the food industry, the food deserts in the role? You talk about why black people eat bad. It costs a lot of money to eat well. Do you realize that?
I do.
You know, so if I can't, we don't have a Whole Foods. And if I have Whole Foods and I can get one chicken and some broccoli for $30, or I can get some cheap luncheon meat and some beans and some chips, I'm gonna get that. Of course, I'm going to drink soda. I can't trust the water. Look at Michigan.
Right.
So there's so many things that we don't understand. Like, why would a person, choose Kool-Aid? Well, because we know the water is not good. So parents are making choices. Why can they eat healthy? It was too expensive. Whole Foods are not in our places. And so I have to eat what's close. So what do I eat? I get groceries at the convenience store. They have cigarettes, chips, day-old lunch meat. And the lunch meat costs 4 times the amount, but I don't have a car.
But that's all you have access to.
Thank you.
So I think
you see the intersection. You see how the issues blend?
Yes, it's so easy for people who have no idea what they're talking about. I'm just going to be really blunt about it. To fob all of these things off. Oh, well, why don't you just, Black people clearly don't care about their children because they're not feeding them healthy. Instead of have you talked to a Black person? Did you go ask them why they don't feel like what obstacles they have? Then you might find out that mother's working 3 jobs and there are no healthy food options in her neighborhood. And she literally does not have the time or the means to get to the store. Like, you think you just get in your SUV and you drive there, but she doesn't have that option. And then, she's living in a neighborhood where, the prices are inflated and she can barely keep a roof over her kids' heads. And there's, she's hoping that they get to school. And there's, all of these things, all of these obstacles that are happening, and there's no health care and she doesn't have any health care. And now she has, some pain, but she's having to deal with that as well, but she can't do anything about it. And, and I saw something the other day. I wish I could remember where I saw it, but I think it was a TED Talk. And there was a very nice gentleman, and he, put up this picture of a girl. She looked a bit poor. She was in an attic and there was a light bulb and she's studying, as we like to have this myth of like, if poor people just applied themselves, they could get out of poverty. Completely misunderstanding the whole issue. But it's just if you just work hard enough. And he said, a lot of people look at this picture with, like, oh, she's working hard, she's studying, and he said, what a really poor person sees? They see she has shelter, she has electricity, she has time to actually devote to studying. She's not working 20 hours a day. And then, and you start to see, it's like, check your privilege. Just because you would be like, well, I would just do this. That's not open to everybody, and are you lucky that it is to you? But if you don't understand the only reason that I do is I did not grow up with this knowledge, but I've done a lot of traveling and I've gone to a lot of different cultures and countries, and it started to make me look at my own cultures and countries, differently, to see actual poverty, because in many countries it's more in your face. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist in America. We just don't have to look at it. So I guess it doesn't exist, but to realize what obstacles people have that we don't have necessarily, and even somebody who's like, well, I have a really hard life. Nobody's ever handed me anything. Yeah. You know what? I'm sure you've suffered. I'm sure you've had, a hard life. That's true. And, that nobody wants to take that away from you, but you haven't had this stuff on top of it to deal with. And Black people in your situation have a whole extra thing to deal with on top of everything. And it's always, and it's every level, this whole extra thing added on top of it, which is like, well, what, you can enter the race, but you can start late and we're going to put 100 pounds on your back. But it's all the same if you just work hard enough.
Yeah.
It's, poverty I've done a lot of research on as well, and looking at these communities and realizing the struggles and obstacles that people have that most of us have the privilege to never have been affected by and never had to face.
Yeah. I love how you said that. Yeah. And I love your analogy, and not only to carry it, but I'm going to cut your legs off.
Yeah.
And not only that, I'm gonna cut your legs off, put it on your back. You only have one arm, and guess what? I'm gonna blindfold you. You don't even know where you're going because you've never been there.
And if you ask for a wheelchair, Fuck you.
Yeah, you're so
You know, what
lazy.
more
How
do you
yeah,
want?
yeah.
You're in the race. You know,
Yeah.
if you worked hard enough, you'd have a wheelchair, even though I just
Absolutely. So I love that analogy, and that's what it feels like. And that's why I'm so grateful for this conversation, because we're just talking, and I have to say your openness just to listen. Thank you.
Well, I would say you're welcome, but I actually want to say it's about damn fucking time, and it's the absolute goddamn least I can do. And that is not coming from a place of feeling guilty about my whiteness, because I don't, or feeling ashamed for what has happened, because I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I feel deep compassion. I feel empathy. I feel a thirst to understand, a thirst to heal wounds on all sides. And they are on all sides. You better believe white people have deep, deep wounds. And if they don't think they do, they're in denial.
Yeah.
Because you don't
oppress can't do people. This work. Yeah. You can't oppress a person without being wounded yourself.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but I hope I can do a little bit of teaching here, because this isn't really about me teaching through teaching, but I consider this teaching through demonstrating. By me sitting here with you and learning from you, perhaps that is a way for me to teach as well. But I think that in these conversations, you know, if I'm willing to show up in a way that is not judgmental, which is what I always aim to do, and humble and authentic and willing to be wrong, that doesn't have to break me, and that does not, you know, there's nothing fragile about it. That being vulnerable does not mean being weak. It actually, I believe when we're at our most vulnerable, and we're owning that, we're at our strongest.
I believe that too. Yeah, I believe that too.
And maybe that will give some people some ideas about how to start their own conversations, you know, with people of color, or people, you know, whoever, trans people, LGBTQ people, your neighbor whom you don't understand and don't get and secretly hate, but you actually have no you know.
Absolutely.
And, like, maybe start a conversation with somebody, have those difficult conversations, have those uncomfortable conversations. Maybe this kind of conversation can show you that it doesn't have to be that difficult.
Yeah.
You know, you know, it's okay to say, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't get that. And I don't have to dissolve in, well, I didn't mean anything. It's just like, oh, well, just tell me then. Like, just tell me if I didn't get it right. And let's check in with each other. And it's okay to say, oh my God, I'm really scared right now. Or, oh my God, I'm really uncomfortable right now. Or, oh my God, I don't understand what somebody was trying to say. And to, you know, to let it be this is why I didn't want these to just be interviews. I wanted them to be conversations, because I wanted this back and forth and this understanding and this learning. And if I can't ask you follow-up questions and really show up fully, then I can't learn. Then I'm just like, oh, well, we're putting information out there and I can feel good about doing that. I helped, you know, instead of, well, hopefully this is beneficial to other people, but I know that it's really beneficial to me. You know, and I hope for you as well.
Yes, this was wonderful. I so agree with everything you said. Humility, empathy is so welcoming. It's so refreshing. It's so inviting. Because what I realize, and when I do this work, people want to be seen, heard, and known. And even if you can't make a difference, sometimes just be in that safe place, what I call the sacred place, and to honor someone else's humanity and witness their divinity, that is healing enough. And so I'm grateful that we had this experience. And I hope people look and see that we said some tough things, but the truth does not have to be said in with venom. I believe it like this: candor. You can candor without compassion is not good, right? But hold up. Candor without compassion is not good. So compassion without candor is not good. But if you put compassion and candor together, that's when you can make change. And I'm grateful for that. because I think we had lots of that, and I hope people will see that it can be done, but it takes a willingness, and it takes a willingness to learn, a willingness to hear, and a willingness to not rush. Race conversations can't be rushed. You know, my pastor always says, he used to say, it doesn't take a lot to be first, but it takes a lot to survive. And so I want people to survive the conversations, because you don't have surgery quick. You know, if I'm a surgeon, I just don't jump in there and cut you. Surgery is done with precision and intention and in time, and little by little, so you don't cut the wrong thing, right? Because it's the same knife. It's a knife in the hand of a thug can kill you, but that same knife in the hand of a surgeon can cure you. You want to be killed or cured. So I think that we delicately use our words. Instead of using them as weapons, we use them as salve to soothe each other's hearts, so we can listen to each other. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much for being part of this, Sharon, and being one of the people who absolutely helped inspire it. That's how bright your light is. And you're like, well, I'm not an energy. You are fucking an energy. If you don't know it, let me tell you, you are. You can find Sharon at SharRonJamison.com. We'll put it up on the screen, as well as her Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter links. If you want to hook up with this amazing lady and contact her, or hire her, she's an amazing coach as well. Again, just so grateful to you, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure this is not the last conversation, and we will have publicly.
Well, I'm grateful, and thanks so much for your time. Talk to you later, my friend.
Bye. Thanks so much for watching this installment of Conscious Conversations. If you're a person of color or other group whose voice needs to be heard, and you'd like to participate in a public conversation like this, or if you know someone who would be perfect for this format, please contact me through my website at melodyfletcher.com. Otherwise, I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Did you enjoy this format? Were there any aha moments? Were you left with more unanswered questions that you may want us to answer in future conversations? Did you get uncomfortable? If you're a person of color, do you feel that your perspective was represented? Let me know in the comments. All voices are welcome, but we do ask that you keep it respectful and constructive. In other words, what you have to say is important, just don't be a dick about it. Until next time, I'm Melody Fletcher, and thank you for bringing your light to the world.